Is it loading?
Okay, you guys, so we just hit live on YouTube and the recording will start right now. So we are live on YouTube and we are recording the episode 10 of the series Voices of Strength. My name is Marissa Barrera and we are doing weekly episodes with families of those killed by police across the nation in the United States. For those who don't know me, my brother, Michael Barrera, was killed by police in 2017 in California. And this series, every week, I'm hosting it with a family who has lost a loved one to police killing. And we are across the nation. We come in various different backgrounds, ages, professions. Today and for this week, we are speaking about Andre Gladen, who was killed by Portland PD. And we have his family here with us right now. We are live and I will let them introduce themselves. Go ahead and say hello.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for having me, Marissa. I definitely appreciate it. I think you've gone over several stories and they're all different, but the same in the narrative. But again, my name is Donna Martin. I am one of 7 siblings of Andre Gladen. So there are, he does have 4 more siblings that are living here. So and my brother, Marquise Martin, is also with me. I'm going to slide over so he can.
Okay, and I think he may have just came into the Zoom.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
so.
Perfect. But again, as it is our duty to continue to spread the story, not only are they what has happened to them, but they were actual people, loved ones of ours. So it's definitely our duty as a living to continue to tell their truth, not only in their life, but in their death as well. What's that?
Sorry, yeah, my laptop wasn't muted. Go ahead. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, I was just simply stating how it definitely is a part of our duty, or a large portion of our duty, to continue to tell the truth in their lives, also in their death. So this is one of those platforms that I'm thankful for, given the opportunity to set some of those narratives straight and kind of let the community, aside from the media and the stories that they release pertaining to our loved ones. Usually when you get folks who read the newspaper or media, they tend to draw their own picture. This gives us an opportunity as family members to tell the truth as to who this individual was, pertaining to the other circulations that they're reading or word of mouth. So thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Thank you guys for being here, both you and Marquise. I just want to, I always start by giving a shout out to you guys, of course, and then the other families who we will have other impacted families watching with us today, and the ones who have already been on here will be on here in the future. When we do this show, and just like Donna shared here, it's not, it's bigger than just our loved one who died, which that's everything to us individually, but it's bigger than that. And there are so many victims of police killings. This last year, 2020, we hit over 2,000 people killed by police. The number was 2,049 that I seen off of fatalencounters.org. They track it pretty good. And you can go on that website and see this. We aren't just making this up. This is real. Right. And did you see that number today, or just these last couple of days?
I've seen it about a day or so ago. and the more we kind of look up to get the real picture as to what's being tallied and what's not, the more one becomes more infuriated with what's happening. So there's a multitude of times that you go up there, look on the websites to get the information you need, but in hindsight, the truth of it really, it upsets me. So I could just imagine what that information, if in fact it's legit incorrect, can do to someone just scrolling the web, getting information on their level, and you just come to find out all sorts of information.
All sorts. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's I don't even have the exact words for how it feels when that moment when it really hits you that, oh my gosh, this has been happening before our loved one is killed, and it's just all too real. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, and you never really get the gist of it until it happens to you. That's the craziest thing, because you live life thinking you read about the things that we've personally encountered, and it's a big deal, but it's not a big deal to you until it happens to you. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
and like I said, this wasn't, I think I mentioned it to you before, but this wasn't the first time that law enforcement has murdered a member of my family. One of my oldest cousins was murdered by the Pittsburgh Police Department in 1997. His name was Ernest Neff. They actually beat him to a pulp. He was indeed paralyzed for a portion. I wouldn't say completely
Goodness.
paralyzed, but a portion of his body was paralyzed, to where they're saying that he did some things that he physically was not able to do. So
My
they
goodness.
literally beat the bones out of his body, face unrecognizable.
My goodness.
Stated that he jumped inside of a canal, a moving canal, and drowned. But the truth was, he didn't have the ability to do that. Where the Pittsburgh Police Department cut a hole in the canal and dipped his body into the canal to get water in his lungs to verify what they did.
My
But,
goodness.
if you're dead, you can't breathe. So there is no water found in his lungs, although his body was drenched of water. So,
Wow.
and that's something, like I said, I was really young at that point, and I couldn't believe that it happened. I thought that, that was, crossing the line,
Yeah.
and it still is, but it continued to happen. It continues to happen.
And to hit your family twice, like, how does that even happen? And thank you for sharing that, RIP. It's just crazy how far apart and how that hit one family. But I do got to mention now at this point, there are a handful of families that I know at this point, you probably know the same ones, but that have had multiple loved ones killed by police. And, that hurts to hear. There was one recently too, and I'm just like, how could that hit a family twice? But it happens.
Yeah, once is one too many. Two it almost becomes, unbearable. There's always a part of you that you have to reserve for the moment you may lose your fucking mind. So you definitely have to reserve some type of sanity, to pull you back, because we all go through those dark hours, when there's no forgetting that what happened to Mike Barrera, what happened to Andre Barrera, there's the Gladen, there's no forgetting that. But some days you can repress some of what you're feeling to get through and go through, but not ever do you forget that it happened. Not ever.
Never, never. That's so true. Um, and your brother can jump in anytime. Is he still on with us?
Yeah, I'm just listening
He's
at the
on.
moment.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Feel free. Um, I did something that hit me this morning. I just want to see how you guys feel. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, I can hear you just fine.
Okay. Okay. I was thinking something I was thinking about this morning. Every morning when I wake up, I'm thinking about my brother. I think about whether it's the video I had to watch, the pictures I've had to see, or just him, and just how like this is waking up and it's a nightmare still. What about you guys?
Oh,
Go ahead.
so sometimes I have to tell myself, and it's waking up, it's going to sleep. But sometimes I have to remind, you know how they say you like pinch yourself and see if you're dreaming? Sometimes I have to say what happened out loud to believe that it actually happened. And then, and I don't have a footage to refer back to. I don't, and indeed, that could be worse than actually having a video, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But sorry, but I don't know what that feels like. But in hindsight, sorry, Marissa,
Oh,
you got
good.
Yeah, I accidentally unmuted it for some reason.
So, but in hindsight, it's something that sometimes you have those days to where you're, knee deep in tears, and sometimes you have those days to where you can get through, but still in your mind, you're like, you feel guilty for a little smile, or you feel guilty for having experienced something that they're no longer here to experience. This shit is tough, and it has mental, mental deficits. It tears you apart emotionally. And if you're strong enough, you just got to keep fighting. You got to keep saying it. You got to keep living for them. But it's definitely hard. There's guilt. Even looking at my kids, I'm like, oh, well, if Dre was here to see this, or oh, if Dre was here to see that, or just imagining things that that he would say. So it's always a tough thing, waking up to it, living through that throughout the day, and going to sleep with it. And like I said, Andre was here before I was born. I never knew life without him in it. You know what I'm saying? So that's I wasn't taught to know how to live life without him. He's been in it since I was been here. So it's difficult to know that you had, siblings, 6 other siblings, and now you don't. It's like, come on, for why? What reason? Makes no sense.
Thank you for sharing that. It's too real. I do want to let you guys know we have some people on watching with us, and just saying hello. Rikenya, is that?
That is Andre's oldest sister.
Okay, so I figured family member. Hello, thank you. We have a couple. We have some Justice family members on here, and so you guys could go back later and check out the comments so you can know what people are saying. But just yeah, some are relating right now to how the feeling of guilt sometimes when we're living our life, and yeah, there's a lot.
Especially this time of year, the holidays are the worst. The birthdays are the worst. Just like my family's huge, and we would get together just because it's Wednesday or a Thursday. We would just do it just to do it. So when that person isn't there, and Andre was the person that either he'd come and F it all up and have it be his way, or he'll come and make the most of it. But the thing is, we don't have that anymore. That moment where he would chime in and do this or would do that, or we're yelling, telling him, don't play in the house with the kids. You don't have that anymore. So you take for granted, all those times when I'm hearing my mom or somebody say, tell Andre to move out the way, or get out of here playing with the kids. Don't throw that ball in the I wish that I could hear her say that. I wish that could happen.
Especially,
but it doesn't.
Yeah, especially for me, because my birthday is 6 days after he got murdered. So it's like,
It's rough.
How can I really celebrate a birthday when he ain't here to help? Because he normally be the one that throw everything together as far as like trying to have fun and do all this crazy stuff. So it's like,
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. It's definitely hard. With the birthday that close, my son's birthday was just couple weeks after my brother was killed. And it's like, how do we celebrate this? Didn't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You gotta find your moments when you can, though. You definitely have to do that.
Yeah, I think back, that's what gets me through like days and certain things. I'm like, Michael would not want me sitting here crying about it still, he wants me and the kids to be happy. And like your brother, he was the one, if it was birthday, like, what are we doing? We're getting into some kind of trouble, but he was also that person for us, and for them to just take our loved ones. It's just insane. All right, so let's go ahead and let's share a little more about Andre. I know he was a sibling, he was a twin, a father, son, lots of things. But if you guys want to touch a little more on your family, just some more things about him, anything.
Yeah, he
a grandpa.
And truth be told, he's a grandfather too. At the 36 when he passed, he was a grandfather of 1, and now he's a grandfather of 2.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, they definitely hit a lot of homes. But Andre, he's that type of person, you can't just label him anything. You're not going to be able to do it, because he is the type, he will tell you exactly how it is and be nice to you at the same time. But you got cussed out and you don't even know you did. You know what I'm saying? But you can't be mad at him. He told the truth. And he's the guy who turned our whole bedrooms into tents with sheets. He's the guy who, ran and, stole some of his friends' candy and came back and gave it to us. He's the guy who beat up that guy who did something to you. He's the brother kind of guy. He was full of nature. He loved being outdoors. And I would tell anybody, if there's anybody that I'm going to be stranded in a desert or anywhere with, the person that make a way out of no way is guaranteed 1 or 2 people. If it's not Andre and Marquise, I'm not going. Because you can't dig to give me no water. You can't pitch a tent. You can't get no fire. I know one of those 2 can do it. And Andre especially, he can make anything out of anything and make it happen. So he's that fun-loving guy. I'm telling you, it's not a person who met him who didn't agree that this is a cool guy. He's a nice individual, but you don't mess with him. Don't mess with him. Don't cross him the wrong way. But at the same token, that was a friend that you would have and you'd have for life. And he was the sweetest little thing. My mother, she actually had a scare, if I'm not mistaken, about 3 years ago. My mother has COPD, and she was having breathing issues really, really bad. And he had found her out of all individuals. Andre, like he said, legally blind in both eyes. But he had the ability to, because this is a home that he spent, some time in, he could maneuver. He knew the straightaway to my mother's room. And I wasn't present at the time. I don't know how he found my mother unresponsive the way that he was. But he actually saved her life out of the people in her home. And he actually beat on my mother's chest, on her chest until she came back to. Wow. And he'd make a joke and say, "Mom, you stuck your tongue in my mouth. You tongue kissed." And it was disgusting. But that's what had to be done. But he was the one to do it. Wow. I mean, out of all individuals, he's the one to do it. So in hindsight, he saved her life.
Yeah.
And so definitely it's time for her to speak for his. So it's time for all of us to speak for his.
Yeah. Goodness. Thank you for sharing that. Those are the things too that, people that are reading about our loved ones, people that are speaking on our loved ones, all these officials, they don't understand. They don't care, but this is the things that people need to hear too, and really see our loved ones as human beings, because they are not seen that way.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So I'll be sharing some photos in just a minute as we speak, just so you guys know, of Andre and family that you shared with me. And so let's go ahead and get started telling the story of what happened. Just from however you guys want to start. Just go ahead and take it away.
All righty. Do you wanna start? You want me to start?
You can start.
So
I know
you see how they do me?
I know you like talking, so go
No.
You
ahead.
like to talk.
But yeah,
She
no.
like talking.
I wasn't the first to get the news as to what happened to Andre. I was at home doing my oldest son's hair when I received a call from my oldest sister, Virginia. She placed a call to me to let me know what happened. Initially, there was no when you hear it, you're always like, what happened? Who did it? Why? Those who, what, where's, and why's come up. So I had no idea. Initially, it was the law enforcement who murdered him. And immediately, even without hearing that, him leaving this world was devastating. But what put the icing on the cake is that the people who are sworn to protect and serve are the ones who did this unjustified act on him. Given his mental situation, given him being visually impaired, Andre had initially left to go to Portland, Oregon from Sacramento, California. And I believe it was on December 1st he left. He was supposed to return back around about the first time he was supposed to come back was around December 12th, because that was his youngest at the time, nieces and nephews birthday, the twins, my brother's twins who's here now. And typically he wouldn't miss a party. He wouldn't miss their party. So I'm not sure what happened to his phone, or if it was off. I have no idea what happened. But we were in communication up until a certain point. After he didn't come back on the 12th, then we'll figure, okay, well, he'll be back by New Year's for sure. He didn't come back for New Year's. And I hadn't spoken with him. Maybe other family members did. I'm not quite sure about it. But on January 6th is when Andre was murdered by the police. January 6th, somewhere around maybe I would say about 6:30, he was when he went to Portland. I'm sorry, he went to a relative's house, which is my cousin, which lives in Portland for several years. So he went to go and visit, and I'm not sure what happened between the two of them, but the story continues to change. But it came to a situation where Andre was, what she states is that he was irate and the police were called. It doesn't further explain if he harmed anybody or what have you. He was just in an irate state. The police were called, and when the police arrived, he was no threat to the person who called, nor to himself, nor to the officers. But he required medical attention. So, and for one, I want to say, excuse me if I'll tie it all together, but excuse me if some things kind of ramble out. Because like I said, if I were present, I'd have that full story, and I really wish I did. But based on the several different articles that were sent out, in collection of everything, we were able to see truth from our side, from knowing Andre, knowing my relative. So just bear with me a second, because the story continues to change. But I'm going to try to put it all together for you. So after the police were called, he was not arrested. Again, he deemed no threat to anybody. A moment later, they said another call came in, and the police who arrived prior to at my cousin's house phoned the officers that had now arrived to the second call that was pertaining to an individual. They didn't know that it was Andre. So they called in, And the officers that arrived prior to let the other officers know, don't arrest him, that he needs medical attention. Andre was found in a bush over 30 degrees below with no shirt and I believe one shoe on and pants. He was taken to the hospital where they said he suffered from hypothermia and seizures. In 2017, if I'm not mistaken, Andre was shot close range with a shotgun, which caused some of his teeth to be shot out, as well as both his eyes, but both damage to his eyes, but which caused him to lose his sight indefinitely. He was hospitalized. He survived that. However, the sight remained completely no function. So with that being said, if you know that being shot with a shotgun, it dispersed pellets. So those pellets were still present in his body. They were still present in his abdomen area, in his head and his skull. Some of them they couldn't take out because it would cause more harm than good. So he would suffer from seizures for, a while. So that is why he was having the seizures, and the combination of hypothermia, you could only imagine. So at that point, when those second set of officers took him to the hospital, the family's question was, how did he get to the hospital? So later we come to find out that he was taken to the hospital by the second set of officers that approached him. Okay. So this article says that the last time my cousin saw him was at 7:00 that morning. And it says several moments later, which would bring us about 7:20, 7:30. Another call came in from an unknown individual that stated that he was in that condition with no shirt, suffering from hypothermia, all the stuff. He was in that hospital for, I can't even have the timeline because Mr. Paskaya, which is the individual who opened the door for him, he continues to tell several stories that range from different timelines. However, I would say from 7:30 to 2 p.m., he was in the hospital getting treatment for the hypothermia and the seizures. The toxology reports show that he had marijuana in his system, methamphetamine in his system, that he partook in alcohol beverage some sort. However, in a separate article, it states that Andre was found with the needle hanging out of his arm. And that couldn't have been so far from the truth. There was never in the toxology reports or in examiner reports, there's a document of every puncture wound, every mark, every scrape, every scar, every cut. And that report showed no such thing as a needle mark, a scrape, or a scar, aside from the ones pre-existing he had from being a teenager. That didn't show lacerations on fingers, wrists, hands. It didn't say any of that. So based on the information that we're receiving, Andre went to the Paskaya's house, which isn't too far from Adventist Hospital. If you were to walk, it'll be about 5 minutes. If Andre were to walk, it'd be probably about 10 to 15 minutes, given that he isn't able to see. He can only see silhouettes of things, not a color, not anything. It's dark out of darkness is the best way he explained it to me. So he knocked at this individual's door. He told him 3 very important things. I was just released from the hospital. I need help, and somebody's trying to kill me. Andre was diagnosed with bipolar schizophrenia, and he was going through a mental crisis. And this is proven fact from the articles that were released before. And not only that, but the statement from the police from Diamond, his cousin, earlier that morning. And with him saying that, the individual says that he sees 2 wristbands on his right arm, which signifies he was just released from the hospital. Mm-hmm. He said, I need help. Somebody's trying to kill me. You knew that this man just left from the hospital. You saw his wristband, you saw the gown. He said that he needed help as to something's happening, you don't know what, and somebody's trying to kill him. Why would he say that? Andre asked him, could he come in the house? The man said no, that he was suffering from a cold or he's feeling under the weather himself. And he said, my brother asked him, can he have a glass of water? So he went to get Andre a glass of water and he shut the door. So in the midst of that, he goes back and he contacts his landlord lives in the house behind him. So this unit that the unit that Andre arrived to, and I say unit because to my understanding and the knowledge that I've gathered from visiting that home and other individuals, this is sort of like a halfway house that has about 18 occupants in it. On that particular day, it just happened to be that individual, Desmond Piscaya, that was at the location, and this is the witness whose home that he knocked on the door. So he goes to the back, goes through the back door to contact the landlord to say, hey, some strange black guy is knocking on my door. He looks like this, he looks like that. So they both agree that he should call the police. So he calls the police and she also calls the police. So there's two calls to the Portland Police Department to come out and see what's going on with this guy. So he comes back to make the phone call, comes in the house, and based on what they're saying, he goes to sit back on the couch and Andre starts to bang at the door with his feet. And somebody's coming towards him. He doesn't know who this somebody is, because as he stated when he knocked on the door, somebody's trying to kill me. Somebody's after me. So he doesn't know who this individual is. He can't physically identify this person. So he's stating that he is, what it states is that he's telling him, the officer is telling him, I'm the police, I'm the police. And Andre's banging on the door trying to get away from this guy because he can't see, he doesn't believe that he's the police.
My goodness.
So the guy comes out of the door. He's yelling because he's pissed that Andre's banging on his door. Not to forget to mention that when he brought Andre the water, he told him he could not come in, but he can sleep on the porch for 5 or 10 minutes. So when he goes back to have the conversation with the lady, they agree to call the police. He comes in and calls the police. Immediately after, this officer arrives. I don't know if they were in the area. I don't know what happened, but they got there pretty quick. So Andre is struggling with the guy, to arguing whether, he's trying to get away from him. He doesn't believe he's the police, to Mr. Piscaya opening the door with some type of cane some type of stick that he was going to craft into a cane. So he opens the door and tries to beat Andre over the head with it because he's irritated that he's banging on his door. So the officer tells him to put the stick down, go back in the house. Piscaya says he's not doing anything because he's not going to be responsible for what happens next, and he doesn't want him to break down his door. So Andre gets to his feet, and he pushes past the witness Piscaya. So he pushes past him and he lands on his hands and knees. It's raining outside. Like I said, he had on a t-shirt. He had 2 gowns under his t-shirt and a wet sock on and one shoe, if I'm not mistaken. So he slips and falls in the entryway of Piscaya's doorway. And he stated that this statement from the police says that he lands on his hands and knees. So they're on Andre from the back. They're on top of him from the back, trying to subdue him to put him in handcuffs. And the witness states, I didn't know what to do. So I just put my foot on his neck to help the officer handcuff. Yes. So I've never known an officer to inquire or to insist on harming another individual that they're not physically hands-on with to assist them in apprehending a suspect. That's not their job. That's your job. You're supposed to do that. But I've never heard of that happening. but they partnered to apprehend Andre, is what they're stating. One article that states that Andre, like I said, was on his hands and knees and kicked the officer in his sternum. If you're on your hands and knees and you kicked him in that portion of the sternum in which he stated, that would be physically impossible to do. But he continues to say he wrestles with Andre while Andre's back is towards the officer's torso, and the other individual's foot is on Andre's neck. They said that Andre had the ability to get up and maneuver away from him, which causes the officer, he was kicked in his sternum, which caused him to be backed into a room. So Andre gets to his feet and locates this officer and pulls a knife on him. And the officer issues the warning shots or the warning tase. He said to no avail. Did anything transpire with the taser shots? Nothing happened. He said he did it again, and Andre dropped the knife. The knife. This is what they call a benchmark dagger blade. So it has a little finger holster at the bottom, and it has finger ridges on the side, and it's double bladed. So you would have to have a shift or something to holster, a holster to carry this knife, because you'd cut yourself. This is not a pocket knife, or it's not one of those knives. It's a knife that you would have to have some type of covering for, because indeed you could slice your hands off. And so the officer says Andre charges him a second time. He picks up the knife after he drops it, charges him with the knife, and he issued 3 shots. One shot went past Andre, and the other 2 hit his center mass, the left center mass. So above his nipple and right under his left nipple as well. And so those were the 2 shots fired that initially killed him. So Andre fell to the officer's feet, and the officer at that time, he stated that Andre wasn't moving at all, but then a moment later he leaned over to grab the knife because it looked familiar. Now, I'm no expert, but I've watched enough movies to understand that the crime scene shouldn't be tampered with, let alone an involved officer or officer in general. His explanation for touching this knife was because he felt like Andre may have still been a threat. So that's still beyond me. This police officer, consider Vosu, after Andre was shot, he was handcuffed. He was rolled over onto his stomach, and he was handcuffed to ensure that nobody in the surrounding vicinity of him was harmed. I don't know if that's protocol or not, but it sounds pretty odd to me. Immediately when detectives arrived on the scene, detective, and also he initially said he called for backup when he was on the porch. However, that kind of gives you a timeline on the length of time that it took place for all of this to transpire. But that the investigators and surrounding officers immediately noticed the dagger out of the officer's tactical vest, and they noticed that this was a knife that was very similar to the ones that Portland Police Department usually carry. On this particular day, consider Vosu, which is a responding officer that executed my brother. He allowed the media to believe for 5 months that he had no idea where that knife came from. The suspect just approached him with this knife. He had no idea where it came from. But the grand jury report released after May 9th states that, he was aware that he had 2 knives on him that day. This particular one happened to be on a zip tie on his vest that he quoted, "The shiv cannot come loose, and I tied it in place to ensure its security on my vest." Those were his exact words. But little did they know, Andre was, we told when we met with Danielle Outlaw, Ted Wheeler, he had some other, I'm not going to use that word, but he had some other puppets in the room too, to show that it is not a race issue. It was a big scene that Ted Wheeler and Danielle Outlaw put on to say that, hey, we'll do everything that we can and so forth. It was a big shit show. They told you exactly what you needed to hear and promised that the person would be charged, whoever whoever is to blame for this murder. We knew that was bullshit, because that meant you had to crucify yourself as well, because you're the chief of police. And then when the chief of police fucked up, everybody they should have all been fucked up from that point. So these are men that you let out in the street, and they did this unjustified act, so she should be held responsible as well.
And Ted Willard would have had to be responsible too, because
Exactly.
what I understand is he's not only the mayor, but he's also the police commissioner too.
Yeah, so that definitely was, that was a double whammy.
Little strange.
That was a double whammy. And I asked Danielle Outlaw, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are familiar, but she's an African American individual. She was based out of Portland or Oakland, California years ago. So she already had a history of what she's able to do to her full capacity, which was not much back when she was in Oakland, California. It's not much out there in Portland, Oregon, and it's not much in Philadelphia, California, where she's now at. She has 2 African American children as well. And I made specific to say to her, if this happened to one of your boys, would you turn a blind eye and say nothing, or would you fight to the death to have it justified? Oh, we'll do this and we'll do that. But if that meant putting one of your own in prison, then that was a no-brainer. We pretty much left it with the same notion we went in there with. They're full of shit. And
Yeah.
she said that, and this grand jury report, mind you, we met with them February 22nd is when all of the February 22nd was the time that we met with Ted Wheeler and Outlaw. And I believe May 9th, somewhere around that time, the grand jury transcripts came out to state, for the officer's review as to what happened, everything that he stated was completely made up. And everybody corroborated the same story. I'm talking about from the investigators, from the reporters, some of the individuals that even did the interview for 2 of the witnesses. And I'm like, that's kind of impossible, because if you look at the timeline in which they're stating, it absolutely makes no sense. The officer had no idea that Andre was legally blind until we met with Ted Wheeler and Danielle Outlaw. They knew nothing about a knife until we met with them. So all of our key points that we brought up as family to say, hey, this is the evidence that we have. This is this. Here's the paper trail. This is what's happening. All of that we brought to them, they used as a motive and narrative to twist the story. So they said, well, there's no mention of this. There's no mention of that. And some of those key points that I brought out to both of them were some of the things that they went on later to deny that they were ever mentioned. We sent documents from the hospital that deemed Andre blind for his surgery to have the eye removed, and to what avail did they render any visibility? And it said none, just as we stated. So we sent them every sort of document of proof that they needed. So the reason why they say that Andre pulled that zip tie, the knife or the shiv from the officer's zip tie, they're speaking from the point of view of a person that has full-on visibility. And there's no physical way that Andre could take that zip-tied knife off out of the shiv, out of the tactical vest. The officer said himself, there's no way that a suspect could initially do that without any vision. And mind you, this is a home that Andre has never been into. This is a person, to my knowledge, he doesn't know. He's around two strangers. And you mean to tell me that Andre has the ability to overpower both you individuals that are over 200 and something pounds when Andre is about 146 pounds soaking wet? So you mean to tell me he was able to get away from both of you, even with you on his back and even with that other Desmond on his foot on his neck? He's able to get away from you, run to your direction. He can't see. How the fuck does he know where you're going?
My goodness.
And yet, unless you're running 2 feet in front of him saying, hey, I'm right here, Andre, follow me. That's the only way it's happening. When Andre was, at family functions or family get-together, the way that Andre moved around is by touching the walls or his hand on my shoulder or his hand on somebody's shoulder. But how would he, to know where you ran to follow you there? And then on top of that, drop a knife and then look to the ground, see it and pick it up and come back to you and charge you again. How does that make sense?
My goodness. So your family,
no sense at all.
Your family was able, like when you guys heard the first story, you obviously knew that's not Andre. Like, what were your guys's, and then for you to have to wait to find out more. And I think it's clear, that the officer planted a knife on your brother, tried to, not knowing about the disability, and it kind of bit them in the ass. We got some comments on here. I just wanted to hit a couple of them. Okay, and this is from Kay Grant, and this is, I think, good for all families to hear too, if they haven't. Even with all the information we already got right now, they recommend still making a FOIA request, which the Freedom of Information Act requests on all records, reports, audio and video, everything that we can possibly, even from, and this is something I got to do too. This person was helping me out, the ambulance, the 911 calls, like the fire departments, all of that. And I want to remind people watching that the reason our stories are like this, we can't give you like a clear shot because we were not there. We don't really know. And we're having to piece everything together. And for some of us, it's taken years. It's almost been 4 years for my family, and we're still getting information. So just for all families, I highly recommend at least attempting to get those Freedom of Information Acts from all the agencies involved in any way and our loved ones, because as we piece the puzzle pieces together, that's the best we're going to get for the truth. But we can find more information. And then I just want to tell you guys too, most of these stories I hear, all of them, they're horrific, they're horrible, they're bullshit, and our families are getting fucked. But I know that you guys keep pushing out there for Andre, and I don't know how I don't know how our stories with our loved ones are gonna end, but I know once you guys get there and all the truth is out there, there's no way they can. There is, because it happens, but I believe that the truth will come out for Andre's story on a bigger level. It's just, how can they use that against a man who was
Andre
disabled?
was initially, when the article was first released, Andre was initially named an intruder. An intruder welded a knife on a police officer of Portland, Oregon. To be an intruder, you have to be what? You have to break into someone's home with a criminal intent. What did Andre do when I told you He knocked at that man's door. The man opened the door. How the fuck is he an intruder?
And
he had a conversation with that man. He asked him, what was the problem? What do you need? He offered him water and money. So, but then, you know, the shitty part about it too, is that the witness was completely on Andre's side up until he was visited by several investigators. Until he was influenced to change his story, along with Diamond Randolph, which is Andre's biological cousin. They were both supporting witnesses to say, hey, the police really fucked up. But long story short, we don't live in Portland, Oregon. We live in Sacramento, California. So there's no way for me to track who's doing this or track who's doing that. But what I do know is both of them have criminal backgrounds and both on criminal record. So both of these is some investigator, some reporter must have threw a twist some type of ways to Sunday, because they both recanted their stories. They both recanted their stories. So yeah, that kind of screwed us in the case there. But he like we talked before. Yeah, the witness was so sorry that this happened. Now, there has to be a hard situation for somebody to review something like that happen in close proximity. There's no doubt about it that that's a hard thing. But continue to tell that same truth. But don't go on and think you're getting neighborhood clout because my brother was murdered in your home. Well, you did shit to help him. You did nothing to help him. And when that anniversary happened, you was the same one out in the street with your drawers naked with track marks on your arm yelling F Andre. So you couldn't have been as sincere as you allowed the media and the reports to say. You stated you don't give a F what happened to that nigga. That's what you said.
My goodness. And you know what? It's not, and this is only the 10th episode for this show, but it's already been mentioned on here prior by other families about the witnesses later changing their stories or not wanting to share the story that they originally shared.
That's because most of the time the police have something on them, so it really helps the police with a lot of things when you get a criminal to want to testify and it comes out that, you know, it's just bullshit all the way around.
Or they pay them off. Yeah. But one of my questions was,
you don't got to be paid off. All they do is say, well, if you don't want to be our witnesses, I know a place that you can go. I'm gonna just violate you and you to prison. Yeah. That's what I'm gonna do.
That's true.
And they don't want to go to jail, so they're gonna say what the hell the police tell them to say.
So then the credibility, because as we know that they had Andre was there. Obviously, the consider Vosu, Desmond Paskaya was the only ones there. However, their names over 30 witnesses that saw or heard, and the neighbors heard this happening and was like, "What are they doing to so and so individual?" One of the neighbors even said, "Oh, it's good. They finally got him."
Oh my
Meaning not, they weren't talking about Andre, they were talking about the witness, because he you know, and I'm not saying one death versus it's not one life over the next. They're all important. However, the behavior of this individual, of the witness, his behavior initially is what they thought that the police were being called for. And he would flip out on occasion. So it doesn't surprise me that when Andre arrived, he tried to hit him with the stick over his head. So that doesn't surprise me. And he's known for the bulldog of this community. And after this happened to Andre, he gets this neighborhood and celebrity fame for this occurring, you know, at his home. Several of the investigators, which I won't name, but several of those investigators are the ones that investigated and interviewed Diamond Randolph as well. So it just by coincidence that these reporters and these investigators are consistent with the story they're relaying one to another to make sure that it's consistent and it supports the narrative that they've set forth for the media to believe.
So as you shared that, I want to remind people watching that it's deeper than the one cop that killed Andre. It goes into, everybody in that department, the chief overseeing, into city officials. Then we have the corruption from the judicial side of it. In the courts, we can't get a fair investigation, as you guys seen. Like you mentioned earlier, they promise they're gonna do what they got to do. If there's wrongdoing, they'll make sure blah blah blah, and it's all just smoke. It ain't. They're not really doing it. I commented on something earlier. A man who is I forget the name. I think it was Jacob Black, maybe Blake.
Jeff Black.
It was today. Just the findings that the officers would not be prosecuted, that they were justified. And it's not surprising to people like us, but what I wrote on there is well, when the pigs are investigating the pigs, it's not ever going to be fair. They're never going to go against their friends.
Exactly.
Their colleagues.
Exactly.
The crazy part about all of that is right after we had the meeting with Ted Wheeler and Daniel Outlaw, Daniel Outlaw just got a reward for I think being able to deal with mental crisis at the moment or something like that. And then it was another article that came out where they said, well, police can't carry knives anymore after all of this stuff and whatnot. But it's like, come on, after y'all just killed my brother, y'all want to come out with all of this bullshit.
The procedure
that don't work.
Yeah, the procedure in which they are to carry any knives or weapons has now been, dismembered. They must carry it in such and such fashion in fear that it could endanger a suspect. But Andre didn't pull that knife off that guy. That guy pulled the knife off of his damn self and put it in his hand. And I'm going to tell you, Marquise Martin and myself were the last ones to see Andre dead in that casket. I checked out his hands. I checked out his face. Andre had not one cut, knife mark, anything on his body. It would have been physically impossible for Andre to take that knife from that guy and not have a single scratch. It's physically impossible for that to happen. And I seen it with my own eyes. He had no cuts on him at all, zero.
And you know what? You shouldn't have to. You guys should not have had to do that. You shouldn't have to spend those type of moments checking, but we have to. And I'm glad you put. That's your instinct telling you, let me check this, because they've been lying.
That's what all the family members do. I'm telling you, we spend long hours becoming our own investigator than the police fucking do, even trying to get on the bureau.
Like, I believe my sister Rakinia, Donna, myself, I think we all have the transcripts from when the police wasn't indicted, and you just go through the whole thing. It's like, I say it's about 250 pages of it, and you just go through it and read just some weird shit on there that doesn't even make any sense. Timelines all screwed up. One police will say this, and the other police recant what he said, and it'll be something different on there. It's like, it's retarded.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things. They don't think we even have enough sense to cross-examine what they've already cross-examined. Like, you don't think that we're going to go back and look at what you just put down on it? Just because it's written doesn't mean that's so. That's your story of what happened. And now if we get to the nitty-gritty about it, let's be honest. The police department support, it's down from the police department, their chief of police, their commissioners, their mayor, and I'm going to go as far as to say the judges, if they even get enough traction to even go to the courts. They're all from the same place. They're just like the district attorney. Some of them are from the same place. They support one another. It's just like that. And I was telling them about one of the reports was saying, all of the toxicology reports were saying that Andre had ingested methamphetamine prior to his arrival to that location. So Desmond states that he arrived at his house at 2 o'clock. From 7 in the morning, from 7:30 in the morning to 2 or 1 something, Andre to 2 o'clock, Andre was at Adventist Hospital down the street. The toxicology reports and these other statements state that he immediately ingested so-and-so within that hour, ingested methamphetamine. Where the fuck was he? He was just released out of the hospital. The lady at the hospital said that man just left here 30 minutes ago. Andre left, was discharged from that hospital, and came back dead less than 30 minutes. So who ingested who with what? Like, what happened?
And the crazy part is when we was out there, we went out there for another, I think
Angelversary.
Yeah, Angelversary, and Donna became ill or something like that. And come to find out that apparently they know us well out there, because Donna was we had to call the paramedics to come pick up Donna to take her to the hospital. And what a coincidence is it was the same hospital that Andre had been released from. And they said that the hospital is no longer taking ambulance intake. So apparently they knew who Donna was, so they wouldn't even take her up there. And the hospital was only 30 minutes from where we was at the time.
Damn.
That's how corrupt it was out there.
Wow.
Yeah, my phone's been tapped ever since. But hey, but as long as it is what it is. It is what it is. But you know what? Is we talk and we, do the protests, we do visuals, we do candlelight, we do what we can do without our loved ones being present.
Yeah.
And people say, talk about what happened to Floyd George, how that rang bells, it hit the street. I mean, I'm sorry to say, with all due respect for the family, but that was a brunt of a collection of all the bullshit that we've had to endure over here and read through over the years. So indeed, that hit the surface when Mr. Floyd was executed the way he was, but that was in conjunction of everybody. At the 2020, we suffered a massive loss. Everybody did. So this was a brunt of that. So, and what furthermore pissed me off is that people were so pissed about the loitering, but not the reason for the loitering. You guys pay so much attention to the fact that folks was loitering, but what about why they were doing it? Yeah. And those are the people that I look out for. Those are the people that I look out for, because you're more focused on the reaction, but not the cause of what happened. Yeah. So people are tired of seeing their loved ones go down this road, and you don't have enough communities that are willing to stand together. And we've talked about this countless amount of times, you and I, Marissa, how there's one organization against the other. One wants to be more front center than the other one. This life matters more than this life, and that it's trying to put the minorities against each other to say that it's more of this than it. Hey, the truth is, has nothing to do with what color you are. This is what you're affiliated with, and that's a police bureau gang. That's it, because they're the ones patrolling the street with full-on capacity to assassinate you at any given time for any reason under qualified immunity. So they're the threat. We're not the threat. I can't do nothing about you killing my brother, obviously, because on February 6th, he walked free. March 6th, the officer was cleared of all charges, no foul, no wrongdoing. He was able to pursue his community, continue to pursue his job, and police the communities that he knows nothing about. And he's able to live and kill again. But to what capacity are we done with it? What do you do at this point?
Gosh, that's something I think about often.
Land me in jail, so that's obviously not right.
Yeah, and I feel like when we're talking about things like that, people think that we are like, hey, we want to kill cops, when we're not even out here trying to kill these cops. You know, we're speaking for our loved ones. People act that way. And thank you for hitting on basically the way I explain it too, is it's like a competition, you know, what organization's getting the shine, and activists act like that too. But I do notice too, it's the impacted families that aren't acting like that. The ones that have actually lost a loved ones were the ones that are not doing that. And it's bullshit. Nobody has suffered the losses that we have. And I have I call myself an expert at this shit now, you know, going on 4 years. As you said, all of us, we lived through it. We've had to educate ourselves and research and become knowledgeable. And our firsthand experience is everything compared to the people out there speaking on it.
That's true. That's true. The thing that I find like super, super crazy too is that you get but the rotation between the police and their availability to patrol this community versus that community. A lot of these police are in communities that they know nothing about. They don't know the history of this community. They don't know Uncle Joe that's usually here around this time, or they know nothing about the roots of the community. So quite naturally, they may be going in to these communities scared. But if you go into the community scared with your hand on your gun, every second you step out of the car, you pose yourself as a threat. So now that person or those people in those communities, they look at you a certain way. If cops would do what cops are supposed to do, a lot more people would live and a lot more cops would survive. You don't see just the amount of deaths that we have to witness out here on these streets. You don't see us burying police by the thousands. Somebody has to be civilized about it, because if we did an eye for an eye for everybody that dropped, everybody should drop in the precinct. If we did it that way. But obviously there's some civility coming from somewhere, but it's not coming from the precinct. And on roundtable, like Jerry Summers would say, like, it is true. As long as these officers are doing what they're doing, they have a chief of police. They should be reprimanded too.
Yeah.
That's just like if my son goes and does some crazy shit, people are going to look back on me like, who did I raise? Who did I send out into this world? That's the same way we look at the chief of police. Who the hell you sending out in this world? A bunch of murderers. That's all it is. It's because qualified immunity allows them to do exactly what they're doing. Until we break that down, they should be judged accordingly as well. It's just because they have a badge doesn't mean it's justified.
I just think it's not enough people that have been impacted by the police willing to fight. It's not enough. That's all. That's what it is. And until it's enough that's out there and want to talk about it and do all of that, police system is not going to change. I'm just sorry to say it like that. It just is what it is. If we don't stand up and if the families don't want to speak and all this other stuff, it ain't gonna change, because they get away with it. And if I get away with doing the same thing, I'm gonna keep doing it. That's just how it is, and that's how the police is. They keep getting away with the same thing. After Oscar Grant out in Oakland, he got murdered. They did it again. It's just if you give me a mile, if you give me an inch, I'm gonna take a mile, and that's what they're doing.
True.
They don't get in trouble. They don't, you know, and then some of them just join to do stuff like this and abuse people probably every day. I mean, we will never really know the amount of people who have been abused by cops. It's definitely an insane number.
Yeah, but you have to agree that nobody's going to fight your loved one's battle that have been lost like you will. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to speak as much on their behalf as you will. People initially, a lot of people relax on the fact and deal with it. Oh, it is what it is. Ain't nothing I can do. Yeah, you can't bring them back, but it definitely is something you could do, because whatever you can do can save that other little girl from losing her daddy or her losing her mom. So it definitely is something you can do, but people, you get so bombarded with the pressures and the grief of losing a loved one, sometimes you just numb yourself out, like the hell with it. So a lot of people have said, what the hell with it? Whatever I do is not going to bring them back. But how about stop being selfish and be selfless and continue to fight and fight for somebody else? So how about that? And you hear a lot of people that we going out screaming this person's name, screaming that person's name. What about those people that stood alongside of you? Nobody wants to hear about your protest until you're protesting on the behalf of their sister or their brother. But when you're out in the street marching, they look at you like you screaming that bullshit. But till I have to scream your daughter's name is when it's going to be important to you. Until I have to scream your son's name, then you're going to want to talk about it. So those are the people that kill me the most. But lo and behold, when it comes your time, and I hope that it doesn't, your name will be screamed too. And it's sad that this is a part of the organization people have to adapt to now that they've lost their loved ones, but it is what it is. There is something we can do about it, but how many voices screaming about the change? People just press on with life. It is what it is. Yeah, it is what you make it. So as much effort as you put into hating the cop that did this, put that same amount of effort into making sure all the pigs go back in the pen. How about that?
Pigs got to go to the pen. I agree. I think a lot of it is people, some of the families, I know a lot of families watching here feel the same way. We're never going to stop speaking. I come across a lot of families that reach out on the low, but they've never really spoken or put themselves out there. And then I often wonder about the families that believe the police narrative, that believe that the police, rightfully killed their loved one. I don't know how to even say that.
It doesn't make sense. And a lot of people come to, I think that's a way for people to be able to live with what has happened. Like try to surrender some amount of peace just for mercy's sake. They say, oh, well, maybe he was going through this and it was assisted suicide, or maybe he did that caused it. There's no maybe, there's no justifying what they did.
Yep.
So I think that's a part of themselves that wrestles with some part of how to get through it, is admit some sort of guilt on their loved one's behalf. But come on now. If 9 times 10, if a lot of us had the ability to be there to the end and actually see what actually occurred, yeah, I think we'd be losing our minds. So I thank God that I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Because, God knows. God knows what would happen.
There, and I do know a lot of these families that actually witnessed it, that were there, or
we got a whole bunch of camera people. We got a whole bunch of camera people, a lot of camera people. But in a business, you can't have a bunch of camera people. You need some mathematicians, you need some writers, you need some journalists. Everybody can't perform the same function. So when you go out and protest, everybody can't have a camera. Sometimes you got to get down there and get dirty and throw the fucking sign down and throw some punches. Sometimes you got to do that.
Can't say I haven't been there.
Yeah, right.
You're
right about that.
Yeah, and that's true. That brings me back to that everybody plays a role. Like not everybody could come on and do interviews or go out and do protests. Everybody could play a different role. And with the families, I know a lot of them don't know which direction to go. So I know just sharing these videos and us speaking about our loved ones, and families tell me, it helps them be able to come out of what they're in, their shell, or whatever it is. It does help them. So I thank you guys for being here and just, always speaking and sharing your brother's story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to say, thanks. And I'm pretty sure you spoke with, maybe Stephanie Babbs, but Pacific Northwestern Family Circle. I want to give the mad respect, the organization out in Portland, Oregon, because every single time they have a chance, they come through and celebrate life for my brother, whether it be on an occasion for their loved one or an occasion for his specific day. Pacific Northwestern Family Circle always does something in reverence for Andre, and I definitely appreciate them for doing that, because they don't have to do it, but they definitely do.
That's awesome to hear. So awesome to hear. Like, big shout out to them. I know Stephanie, and she's been doing, lots of good work out there too after losing her brother as well. And that's what it takes. Some of us family members, different roles, like you said again. We have a couple comments. I'm just gonna go over these, and we can, if there's anything else you guys want to share before we close up. Thank you for having the courage to speak out, the courage to deal with these imposters, executioners that took Andre's life. Jen Ruiz, impacted family member. The reason she joined this movement is because her brother is gone, so she could speak on his behalf as well. We have a Karen Sutherland. Her son was also, he was just killed in 2020. She's on here. Tiffany Tavares.
Sorry about you.
Yeah, so we got, families. Thank you guys for being here too, and helping share each other's stories. That's part of what this is about. We can't do it on our own.
No, we can't.
Is there anything else that you guys want to share before we close up tonight?
Well, Andre, his angelversary is tomorrow. It would mark 2 years. It seems like 59, but it's just 2. And so I just ask that everybody kind of lift his name up tomorrow. And just keep the family and his mother in prayer. And then we'll definitely do the same. So all the information, all the names that I have, and definitely say a prayer for those families all the time, because we oftentimes we don't get the support from the people that you think you should get the support from, but you often get the support from strangers or one to another, or those that are currently in the fight for their loved ones. So when you have to lean on other people, just go ahead and lean, because that's how you get through. You never know, someone listening to the podcast, understanding what you do, Marissa, and people like Kervin Julian or Stephanie Babs or Yolanda McNair, those people and Patrick, those people are powerhouses, and you can lean on them. So I have to do it all the time. I probably have to make a call every other week to one of them to get me off the ledge, because I'd be ready to lose it. But other than that, I just hope that everybody keeps everybody in their prayers, because it is a struggle. It's day in and day out, and it doesn't stop until we 6 feet under. So until then, we all need to keep each other up.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I will definitely be lighting a candle tomorrow for your family, for Andre on his 2-year angelversary. It's crazy. I remember just doing my brother's 2-year, and now we're about to go on the 4-year, and it feels the same.
Yeah.
It feels the same.
It's like in the womb.
Yeah, I don't think it'll ever go away. Like, I don't think, that's our sibling. That was our brother. So
yeah.
Okay. I do want to also, tomorrow is Andre's angelversary, and there are 2 other families that I know that are that have their loved ones angelversary. So shout out and love and prayers also to the family of Patrick Wetter, and then also Autumn Steele. Both of theirs are tomorrow also. And unfortunately, there's a lot of other ones that we don't know.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, so I'll be lighting the candle for you guys, sending you guys love and prayers always. Thank you for being here, and you can lean on. I talk to impacted families every week, so I'm here. You got
that.
But okay, thank you guys for being here. You guys have a good night, and see you on Facebook.
All righty, will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.